That's the great thing about laughter. It debunks power.
Yeah.
Almost sort of straight away.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than bombs and rockets, I
So
think.
right.
It doesn't laugh at people.
Yeah, right.
That's what
so
many people in the world need at the moment.
Yeah, the pomposity, just laugh at them.
Yeah. And you feel suddenly very vulnerable.
Hello, and welcome to the third act. I'm Catherine Fairweather, back for a third series of sparkling conversations with vintage minds. I'm really honoured to welcome as my guest to this first episode the one and only Sir Michael Palin, cultural icon and all-round national treasure and good egg, though he'd balk at that description. Knighted in 2019 for his services to culture and to travel, his third act has seen him circumnavigating the world, 99 countries in 3 decades, for popular BBC and Channel 5 versions of Palin's travels. He is a travelling paragon of courteous curiosity, the quintessential mild-mannered, reserved Englishman abroad, except, of course, his observations invariably come out of left field, and his ever-percolating humour is a fillip and a tonic. A sense of comic anarchy also defined Palin and his Monty Python cohort, with unforgettable sketches and groundbreaking films, including The Life of Brian, that fused slapstick, satire and parody and became a standard against which all ensuing British comedy acts were set. His film career included memorable creations such as stammering Ken Pyle in A Fish Called Wanda and Mad Molotov in The Death of Stalin. And he's the author of nearly 15 publications that include novels, travelogues, histories, and even a quirky collection of his own limericks. We sat down at Auriens to get into it all. Welcome, Sir Michael Palin. It's wonderful to have you here on the third act, on this chilly Midsummer Night's Dream day.
Yes, there's something wrong.
There's something very wrong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, author, actor, comedian, presenter, how marvellous for you to have led so many lives and tried on so many hats. Which of those hats do you wear most comfortably?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I mean, I enjoy writing, and I've always written fairly easily and comfortably. Not always very successfully, but writing comes quite naturally to me. So I suppose it would be writing. If I couldn't do anything else, I would write.
It's relaxing for you, is it?
It's relaxing, but actually it's also quite demanding. I mean, I keep a diary every morning, and I just try and write down as much as I can of what happened the day before, and just actually finding the words to describe the detail the day before in a way that isn't just exactly like the day before that. So avoiding repetition, avoiding cliche and all that. It's quite grueling, but it's good. It's very good practice, and it's very good practice because I do it handwritten, so I like that.
You don't switch on a computer, or
No, I don't switch on a computer. I mean, it's about as far from AI as you could imagine. My diary, hopefully.
Do you use an old-fashioned thesaurus, or you don't need to?
No, I don't. I'm afraid I Google.
Do you? Okay,
yes,
Google that.
Terrible, really. I've got so many reference books that, as big as bricks there, and I just don't use them as much. I used to cherish them so much, the Oxford Dictionary and all that sort of thing, Dictionary of Art and Artists, a lot of those great, wonderfully assembled books, but you really don't need them anymore.
No, you really don't, and it makes the brain a bit lazier, doesn't it? You can just Google at your fingertips.
Yes, I think it generally makes you a bit lazier. I'm a great believer in little sort of what seems like inconsequential physical movement. I mean, just actually having to stand up, go to a shelf, get a book down, open it and look at it. I mean, that's a good bit of biz.
Yeah.
Physically quite good for you.
Absolutely.
And we don't do that much now. All my books are way up there, and I just click the button and Google this, which is wonderful. I mean, search engines are, I just think, absolutely miraculous.
So these diaries, are they a little bit more salacious and revealing than your great Uncle Harry's diaries that you quote from in this wonderful book that you've just had published?
Yes. Well, they're in the same spirit as his, just keeping a record of what happened. But no, they're not particularly salacious because I haven't, sadly, led a very salacious life.
You still might.
That's the message of our generation, I hope. Well, I mean, the thing was that Harry, amazingly enough, for a man who obviously fairly sort of plain speaking and his entries are a bit terse, but he had the background of the war to write about. And I mean, I can't see myself to fight in a war like he did at Gallipoli and on the Somme, managing to write with his little lead pencil every day something in the diary.
Yeah,
I'm not. I think I'd give up then. Really.
So do I. I was thinking that. I wonder if that ritual, in a way, kept him tethered and kept him sane.
I think it is, because it is a ritual, really, diary keeping in the end.
It is.
I mean, you can't just, well, some people do it every 3 weeks, something like that, but if you're going to do it on a daily basis, it's got to be part of your life, like cleaning your teeth. And in fact, I write mine in the morning about 9 o'clock and do it for 15, 20 minutes and then get on with the day.
The rest of the day, so it sort of makes sense of your day. It will make sense.
Well, it gives substance. This sounds very pretentious, but it gives substance to the day before and for each day I've lived. And of course, now looking back, it's been incredible. I've just got, going back to 69 when I started it, I've got, the majority of the days are accounted for. And it's been terribly useful because how can you remember what you did May the 3rd, 1977 or something? But I can go straight to it.
Yeah, you can mine your own memories.
Well, yes, it gives substance to your life in a way and makes you feel, well, I can account for most days. So it's been diary keeping in the family for a long time.
The 12 publications, and I discovered that you'd written a wonderful book of limericks. I didn't know you could write a limerick. I think I'd love you to read one of my favourite limericks of yours. Would you
yes, well, thank you. I mean, limericks it's a strange thing to do. It's the sort of thing everyone knows a limerick, and you tell a limerick, and usually they're very, very disgusting and are told after a lot of drinks at parties. But it is a form which has its own rhythm. It's like a song, really. I think it probably originated in Ireland as a song form. And so I wrote a few, and then I was trapped in by an editor saying, "Could you write a book of limericks?" I said, "Oh, sure. How many do you need for a book?" "Well, we need about 250 or something like that." And you could have seen me sometimes at my desk on limerick number 83. Oh, God, I'm thinking, why did I take this on? What rhymes? Nothing working anymore. So it turned out to be quite a slog, but in amongst all the limericks, there were some quite nice ones I liked, yeah.
Well, please read me that one.
Oh, well, okay. This is your choice.
Yes, this is my choice.
Catherine,
I like this one.
Okay. Here we go. A young window dresser called Jack kept several goats in a sack. He fed them so rarely that one day, quite fairly, they ate him and put the bits back.
It's very Monty Python-esque, I think, or Roald Dahl-ish. But,
yes.
There is that seam of comedy that runs through, or humour that runs through everything you do, isn't it? Even when you're playing you're not playing, you are a mild-tempered, quintessential, reserved Englishman abroad when you're doing your travel programmes. But there is that kind of seam of slightly naughty, wry humour.
Mischief, I call it. Yes. Yeah. Well, I look for that. It's really not just... It's not just for comic effect. It's just to try and find out what's different about a place, what you think rather so arrogantly that you would have spotted and no one else would.
Yeah.
So I love signs on garages and all that when you're abroad and all that thing.
I love that.
In Ladakh, there was a wonderful series of road safety boards put up by the Indian government. And things like, after whiskey, driving risky.
Yeah.
Drive like hell, you'll be there.
And I love that sign in your Nigeria programme that's just been on television and we've all enjoyed watching. That wonderful contrast. You're in the hustle bustle of Lagos and then you get to that beach, and Takwa Beach. And there's the sign with every possible sort of don't do this and don't do that.
Exactly.
And a totally empty beach. No wonder, as you say, Riley. Yeah.
It has wonderful things like no smoking of Indian hemp. It's very specific, Indian hemp. And then of course, the one about no homosexualists,
Yeah.
brackets, and lesbians
Yes.
as well. All this on a beach,
Yeah.
But it was empty not because actually people don't use it. It was just we were there during the week, and no one goes during the week. It's at the weekend.
So
They all
cheek
go
by
out
jowl
there,
on...
apart from homosexualists, of course. They would be told to go.
What an incredible sort of feast for someone like you, Nigeria must have been. I mean, it must be everywhere you turn. There must have been a sort of amusing thing to
Well, what was so
observe.
good about Nigeria, which when I took it on, I was rather fearful because a lot of people said, nothing works there, it's terrible, why do you want to go to Nigeria? But we chosen to go and we went. And it's just that when you get there, you realise that the Nigerian people are very direct. They will talk about anything straight away. There's none of the English or deferential, would you mind possibly, could I have this or that? They go straight into, hey man, what do you want? What are you doing here? And it seems very aggressive. And after half a minute, they've got their arm around your shoulders and you're laughing together. So there's a wonderful quality. And they talk very, very well. And that's marvellous for my programmes.
Marvellous.
Because I do want the people who I meet to talk. I don't want to be talking myself. And they are wonderful throughout the series. And of course they speak English, which is great, which helps.
And they'll be the second most populous country in the world in a decade's time, won't they? After India and China. I mean, an astounding thought.
The average age of the population is 18. Yeah, and there's 220 million people. But it's extraordinary.
How does it function?
Well, not very well. In terms of the fact that the lights will go off after a conversation anywhere or in a restaurant or in an office or anywhere, and then they come on again about 15, 20 minutes later. The roads are, you talk about potholes, they have ponds, they have small lakes in the middle of the road, but it's all deteriorated.
Yeah.
And the general sort of standard of the cities and the way they're looked after is pretty appalling. It's all rubbish piled up everywhere, apart from the capital, Abuja, which is designed by the Americans and is sort of spotless. But it's a difficult place to get around.
Do you think there's hope for the place? Do you think they'll?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think because the government apparently seems to be so, well, unsatisfactory, I suppose you could say. People have to control their own destiny. So there's a great deal of initiative and small-scale ambition. And it's not just joining gangs, although there are plenty of gangs. It's going out and selling things on the street. Yeah. It's not feeling in any way that a job is beneath you. That is your way to getting on in life. And an awful lot of the books they read there, and in almost every bookshop, they're all about ambition and how you get on in high finance. Yeah,
there's a lot to be said about self-determination. But
yes.
I just wondered whether these countries that you pick are because it makes quite good television to get out of your comfort zone, or to encourage us all as viewers to get out of our comfort zones as well, because shake us up a bit, shake up our perceptions on.
I think it's also what I feel I can talk about. I mean, going to Italy and doing a cooking programme like Stanley Tucci does or something like that, that's wonderful, lovely thing to do. But for a start, I don't know much about food and cooking, so I wouldn't be able to sort of provide any great enlightenment there. And I just sit around eating and drinking. And so I like to be somewhere out of my comfort zone, because I think that brings the best out of me and makes me think, makes us all think on our feet and decide what to do next.
And when you're traveling, do you travel when you're not working? I mean, is that something you love doing generally? I mean, do you go on holiday?
Well, I do go on holiday. Yeah, I go with the family every year. But I'm a sort of bit of a mass of contradictions. I love travelling, but I really like being at home.
So you travel in a way to remind yourself how much you love being at home.
Yeah, well, it does have that effect, exactly. When you come back, I mean, if I would get very bored if I was at home all the time, and I just because I think if you're not careful, you read the newspapers, you look at the news, you talk to people, you take in an awful lot of information, but it's all second-hand information. It has to be, really, unless it's happened to you yourself. And going abroad, for instance, going to Nigeria, I was seeing what was really happening in Nigeria for myself. So a lot of people at home would say, don't go there. It's corrupt and it's a mess. Okay, it was corrupt. It is a bit of a mess. But there are other wonderful things about it. And I've discovered that. So that's the sort of bittersweet side of travel.
What's your opening gambit, or what's your icebreaker with people when you're travelling?
Well, if there's anything sort of nearby that's kind of odd, or I don't know, you just draw attention to that. Or if they'd have children, draw attention to the child or something like that. If you see, like we did in the middle of Nigeria, free tickets to Anfield in this little village right up in the north, so you can talk about that. That's something odd that you can share the oddness together. So that's a way of doing it, I think.
And do you think that you've travelled in so many countries, 99, I think you told me. I mean, we all say that humour is a great glue.
Oh, yeah.
And do you think, is it the great universality of man that you find astounding, or is it that we all have our own different quirks and we find different things funny?
Well, I think, in generally speaking, humour is a very, very good thing that everybody enjoys to a certain level. I mean, a slapstick, if you do, that's why Mr. Bean is so popular all around the world, because he falls over a lot and he's a white man making a fool of himself. But anyone making a fool of himself, someone kicking a football, missing and falling over, children throughout the world love that. So it's so easy, especially in Africa. There's some great sense of humour, certainly in Nigeria. So that's something that you can communicate through that. Otherwise, I mean, you've got to enjoy the differences. You've got to put yourself. You can't take with you all the props from England. We used to when we did Round the World in 80 Days. We took sort of Sainsbury's biscuits and a sort of tuna from one of the local shops and things like that. So we didn't have to eat the foreign food, and it was utterly ridiculous. And when we got on this dhow, which is a very traditional sailing ship, down the Persian Gulf, we opened our tins of sort of salty biscuits or whatever, and they just pitied us, the people who were running the boat. We were poor fishermen from Gujarat, and they said, look, we're making a curry, we'll make a bit more for you tonight. And they did, and from that time onwards, they always used a bit of their precious food to make food for us, because they couldn't bear to see us eating these terribly dry, lumpen things that we brought with us. And from that time onwards, I've always just eaten the local food, because it's a way of discovering a lot about the country.
Absolutely. I mean, is there anything you really can't stomach?
Well, you find that out.
What's been your most revolting food experience?
Well, the most sort of traumatic one was actually in a refugee camp in Algeria, where, again, we were staying with people with very, very limited resources, who were very happy to have us there because we were describing the plight of why they couldn't live in their own country. And they cooked for us all week, and there's not much meat in those refugee camps, but they bought a bit of camel, and so every night we had camel. In various shapes and forms. It was fine, and clearly it was quite a sacrifice for them to spend so much on such a prized bit of meat. Anyway, the very last day we're going, and I'm saying thank you to the lady who's looked after us so well. And, a bit of warmth like that works very well. She was so happy. She said, look, I've got a last bit of camel for you. So she handed me this bit of camel, and it was camel liver. And as I put it into my mouth, I knew that it was past its sell-by date.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and there's a terrible, terrible pong. And I ate it. And then we had to go on into the Moroccan countryside to find a guerrilla group who were sort of holed up somewhere in the desert fighting the Moroccan government. And so it was all very, very bumpy. And at one point, I knew this was it, that it was going to start coming up. And it did. So the whole convoy, is about 6-7 vehicles with armed men and all that, came to a halt while I had to go out in full view of this sort of circle of wagons. I threw up. And I tell you, a really nice thing happened then, because I could see my crew, I look back, they were a little bit embarrassed, Oh dear, presenters throwing up and it's only day 3. But then one of the older men of our sort of Algerians who were looking after us came across and he put some cold water and a little rag on my brow and waited until I'd finished.
Lovely.
He didn't worry about the fact I was spouting, having a technicolor yawn all over the place. And I was so touched.
Yeah.
I was so touched by that. He didn't say anything, just he did what I wanted, really, was just to be soothed. Anyway, then we went to interview the generals in charge of the rebel forces, and so I was just about able to get 3 questions out from him. Then I would go out and say, I'm just going to check on my notes, and I'd go out of the cave and throw up and come back.
Did they rumble you?
I don't think they did, really, no.
Well done.
A lot of people are, especially if they're sort of have any position in society, they really they think only about themselves. So sometimes it's very, very nice to get behind that facade.
Yeah.
A very quick illustration would be, we were in Tibet, of all places, and we were gone to a yurt, and then we were interviewing a yak herder, so I was just in my sort of scrubby old trousers and a T-shirt, and he put on a suit. He'd obviously found a suit from somewhere, because the people coming from England. So he was very formal.
What, herding his yak in his suit?
Well, yes. I mean, he didn't touch the yaks, really. They were all herded. But then when we went indoors to have some tea, there was his wife, and his wife didn't really say much, didn't take part in all that. But there was a lovely sort of tableau of the wife, 2 small children, and she was churning butter in a long, tall churn. And the children were just doing what children all over the world do when a stranger comes in. One of them's showing off and pushing the other one around, saying, look at me, I'm the one Daddy loves. And the other one was a bit quiet. It was just such a wonderful little universal moment. But the wife was really the one who was in charge at that point. And she wasn't in a suit or anything like that. She hadn't expected us to come and film her. But that was a wonderful moment where there was real life behind the sort of, as I say, the dressed up, presented life.
Yes, and is that a challenge when you're travelling with a crew to find those moments, those genuine, sort of authentic, spontaneous moments?
I mean, you can set up a certain amount in advance, because what happens is the director will have gone out maybe 6 months before and chosen a route and all that. But when you're actually there filming, you just don't know quite how people are going to be, and that's part of the fun of it. So you have to be sort of light on your feet and ready to adapt.
And Michael, what about, I mean, it must be a salutary thing to see how, when you travel, the way people in these countries treat the older generation with so much respect. Do you think that we can learn a lesson or two from these countries and the way they treat their older people?
Yes, I think we can. It's just a different way of life. I mean, in the poorer the community, the more valuable the older people are. All hands to the plough. Everyone's got a job to do, and of course they have wisdom, which is considered, and they know a lot about the traditions of the societies. And tradition is very, very important. I mean, as a sort of general part of life. Now, here it isn't. I mean, we love the royal family and watching the sort of coronation and all that. But there, it's every day you're going to an older person to find out why it hasn't rained or why this creature has got some particular problem or sort out some family problem. So yes, they're very much more involved. I mean, they don't really put them away. They don't put them to pasture or to old people's homes, do they? No, well, there are no old people's homes. No. Well, there are very few homes, really. But I mean, yeah.
Right. But you see, you are a sort of, must be a bit of the bane of your life, because as a kind of Peter Pan now in your 9th decade,
yes,
you are being forced, aren't you, to constantly sort of look back over your past and discuss it with people like me. And you're constantly made to look at clips of Monty Python and Life of Brian.
You see, well,
do you mind that?
I don't mind that particularly. I find actually that's it's quite important sometimes to look back, and whenever you do look back, you look from a slightly different perspective. I mean, when the Python shows were first done and we did the Monty Python films and all that, I always looked at them very critically to start with. First of all, you look at your own performance, oh, that could have been much funnier. Then you look at a bit of sketch, oh, we should have written that, we should have kept that line in. Everything is very, very sort of forensic. And then 10 years later, you say, well, yeah, it's not so bad, I didn't notice that. And 20, 25 years later, you just laugh. If it's still funny, you laugh at it. And so it's quite nice looking back. And I don't watch Python shows very often, but I see some of the Python TV shows now, and they I have to say, they make me roar with laughter.
Good.
I remember one sketch, I think I was a newsreader, and it started with the camera swoops in towards me, one of those dramatic, dum-da-da-da-dum. And as it swoops in, it just passes a big sign above me, says, "Is the Queen sane?" Question mark. And you don't see it the first time, even the second time, but it's there, and it's just little things like that.
Things like, I really love your Pontius Pilate though. He's my favourite.
Yeah.
The one who can't pronounce his R's.
Yes.
It cracks me up every single time. But
it's quite a good thing about power too. Yeah. Because when we filmed it, I can remember filming it in Monastir, and we got a lot of monasteries where they filmed a lot of biblical epics. So the local extras were, sheep herders one day, and then be, sort of a crowd in Jerusalem the next. And they didn't know what was going on, but there they are, and they were told by Terry to roar with laughter at me and just point everything I did. And it's just, you're up there, and I realised, gosh, that's the great thing about laughter. It debunks power.
Yeah.
Almost sort of straight away. Yeah. I mean, it's better than bombs and rockets, I think. Right. Just laugh at people, that's what... Yeah. So many people in the world need at the moment.
Yeah, just pomposity, just laugh at them.
Yeah. And you feel suddenly very vulnerable, because even if you've got your army behind you, you've been laughed at, therefore you're mocked, therefore you're someone discovered a sort of weak point in you and all that.
But I wonder if we're particularly good as a nation at being silly. I mean, it's both very clever and really silly, and quite schoolboyish quite a lot of the time. Is that a very English thing, or...
I think we're quite good at being silly. I think that we have, in an odd way, British society is quite sort of traditional and conventional in many ways, and we do abide by the rules and all that. And it's like being at school, really. You get your first laughs by impersonating the teachers. That's the thing about Monty Python. It was sort of abundantly kind of joyful. It wasn't really making any sort of serious points, although it was occasionally. Anyway, so I can look back, and I quite enjoy looking back, and I realise that, now, in my 9th decade, your perspective on life is very interesting at the back of your life. I mean, I want to keep working, and I'm determined to keep working for as long as I can, and I would hate not to. But at the same time, it's worth looking back and evaluating what you've done. I think it is, because good work is sort of creates a momentum. If you've done something good, then something else will come of it, then something else will come of it. And I recognise that pattern in my life. If I've got things wrong, well, that's a dead end. That won't happen again. If I've got it right, that leads to something. And then something else.
As a traveller, you're looking forward. You're looking at new horizons.
Yeah.
You're also, as you just said, being asked to look back and to evaluate your life. Are you prone to nostalgia?
Yes, I do get quite affected by it, because I'm aware that an awful lot of things that I rather criticise my father for, I'm like that. I can't, I can't get away from it. You can't say my life's been utterly completely different. The fact I love trains and train travel is entirely down to the fact that he used to take me down to the station, and we'd have boring sort of stand at the end of the platform while trains came in and out. And so things like that are quite interesting when you look back. And you think there's far more in the life now at 80 that was there in the first 10 years of your life than you imagine. All love of travel, writing stories, all that sort of thing. That's
That
what
was
I
there
did then.
then,
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
Always.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
desire to tell a story or find a story.
But also desire to get away from the house and travel up. We lived on the edge in Sheffield, on the edge of the Peak District, and I rode my bike, and just wonderful exploring this very dramatic countryside, with the big gorges and the little rivers and all that. That was terrific. And at the time, I just thought, well, that's what you did. But now I realise it's what I did, and that a lot of my friends didn't get that same kick from it. But I really did, and I think I wanted to go somewhere, a bit like Uncle Harry in the book, I was never satisfied just being in one place.
You were always restless then.
Yeah.
And adventurous as well.
Yes, by default, really. I mean, you had to have adventures because you didn't know quite what you were going to do next. So you had to be prepared to say, yes, I will try this and try that. So
in this interesting period of your life where you've still got a lot of energy and vim and vigour, and yet you are in your 9th decade, and you're looking back over your life and you've lost your wife, sadly, that must put a whole different spin on how you feel about being older, friends and family.
Exactly as you say. It's really, you have to deal with loss, which you don't when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and not so much even in your 50s. But that's I realise now that there are, Helen and Terry Jones and Neil Innes, people who I got on with so well, or not really so well. It's just that they understood, they shared my life with me, and so everything I did sort of was sort of they were part of it, and so if they've gone, you lose their place in your life, but also their ability to affect your life. And I mean, with Helen, it was wonderful because she was very pragmatic and down to earth, completely unshow busy, but she had very, very good advice, about things. You say you shouldn't do this or should do that. And it was just a nice sort of, understated way. She knew exactly how I worked, and I knew exactly why she was such a good, such a good sense of the right advice. Now I don't have that advice, so I feel a bit like a sort of
without a
ship
compass.
that's gone a little bit.
Without ballast.
The rudder's broken.
Yes, I can imagine that. And what was the quality in her that you admired and respected most?
Well, it was her straightforward, down-to-earth, good sense, really. And she had a sort of calm approach to life. I would get terribly excited about something or angry about something, whatever, and she'd be there sort of in the middle. And it was just because she had an infuriating ability to do the right thing or say the right thing. Not always, we had arguments, of course, but that straightforward, common sense, practical attitude to life was very, very good, because I'm not very practical.
And is that the quality you like if there's one quality about people, what do you look for in what do you enjoy most about?
Well, humour.
Humour, yeah.
I mean, it'd have to be, really.
Yeah,
and Helen and I laughed an awful lot.
Yeah.
And humour at the right time just can deal with so much.
Yeah.
But I just like people to be honest, and not have any sort of superficial thing, just let's get straight down to it. And that was a great thing about Terry and others. They had a very, very sort of clear way of looking at the world.
And in yourself, you must be very driven, obviously, because you just never stop, and your career is immense.
Well, I daren't stop, really, because I don't know what I'd do if I stopped. But sorry, carry on.
Well, we can go back to that.
Yeah.
So for you, your success is probably a combination of huge talent, obviously.
Well, that's nice to know, but I think it's just a way of getting on with people. I just like to get on with people, whatever they're doing, and I'm interested in people.
Yes.
And some,
Yes.
I know some people aren't. I know that Cleese, for instance, is drawn to things that make him angry.
Yes.
Whereas I'm drawn to things that make me
exactly polar opposites.
Happy.
Yeah.
So it's I'm quite easily happy. I mean, I do. I do get up each day.
Happy.
Well, less so now with the spring in my step, thinking
God, you're
the
blessed.
world's a wonderful place. There's so much to see, so much to do. There's a bit of Pollyanna in me, really.
That's a wonderful thing. How lucky you are to be like that, I think.
Yeah.
So what character are you proud of? Is there a particular character or sketch that you are most proud of, or a travel program that you've done?
Oh, gosh, there are a number of things, really. One thing I really very proud of is being the voice of the clangers.
I didn't know that.
Yes, no, I
yes, a
I
clanger.
voiced about 60 clangers, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that was lovely, because children are a great audience.
Yes. Well, gosh, that makes me feel nostalgic, I must say. That does take me back.
Yes, yeah.
I wonder if the younger generation, they don't know the clangers, or have they?
Well, they remade it, you see,
good.
because the original ones were done by the two creators and had a brilliant commentary. Then they asked me to do, they were writing some more about 10 years ago, and just got me in to read the commentary. And I found it a very, very hard act to follow, because the man who'd done it before was so good. He is one of the inventors of the clangers. And he was rather testy with them all, so Grandma he dropped her wool again, come on, pick it up. So it had a very nice sort of middle-aged, angry headmaster feel to it.
And do you think that money smooths the wheels and it is a good ingredient towards happiness?
Well, yes, no question, really. But I do remember that the early years, our early working years, 1965, I sort of came down from Oxford, and it was 1970 or so before I was earning any real decent money that could be saved up and put away and mortgage could be paid up. So I had 5 years there where I worked very hard, and there wasn't a lot of money coming in, but we had got our house, still paying the mortgage, we had our first child, so an awful lot was happening in those 5 years. The sort of underpinnings of our life were all there, set out. And if at the end of those 5 years the whole thing had fallen apart and Monty Python had just been a flash in the pan, there was no other work to do, I don't know what would have happened, really. It would have been very difficult. So I am fortunate that from that moment on, from about 1970, Python, 72, the money was coming in fairly regularly, and what I talked about, momentum, one thing leads to another. And once you get on that roll, that's okay.
What do you do with these lovely checks that you get?
Spend
Royalties? You're a spender.
No, I'm not a terribly good spender. But we've always travelled with the family. I've taken them all over the world, really. So that's one thing. We've had a house in North London now, which is a little corner house, and we bought the one next door but one, and then we bought the one in the middle. So I've got a little corral of little houses there. But I haven't wanted to go anywhere else. It's nice to have money just to say, the other day, Rachel, our daughter, who's unmarried, very happily unmarried, but I decided that I should take her for a holiday, because the last year with Helen's death, it's all been quite hard work. She's been terrific. So we went off to Costa Rica, and it was quite an expensive holiday. By the time we did everything, we didn't stay in lush places, but it was quite expensive. So it was very nice to be able to just say, yes, I can spend it on that. But otherwise, I've been very fortunate that all the children have houses in London, which they wouldn't have been able to afford, to be honest. Well,
so you help them out.
I think
there,
one of them would, but the other two, I help them out, because and I just get so worried about people now who in their, sort of late 20s can't afford to live anywhere but with their parents and all that.
Yeah.
And I think I was very lucky to be earning enough to buy them those places.
And Michael, inevitably, because your friends and family have died around you, what do you think about debt? Do you think about it much for yourself? Do you wonder what happens to you when you gasp your last breath? Do you?
Yes, I've come quite comfortable with it now, really. I think Helen was quite ill for about 2 years, and gradually wound down, couldn't leave the house, lost her mobility and lots of things that she didn't. She was always very active. And I saw that, and we talked a lot about decay and, approaching death. we didn't sort of shy away from that. But I always said, "But you're not Kate. You'll be all right. You'll get better." And she didn't get better. So, but in the end, when she died, it seemed the best thing. And so I don't have a horror of death, and I don't feel death as a sort of malignant. Doesn't have to be a malignant thing. It was awful that she got ill. I wish she wasn't. All these things hadn't happened to her, but they did, and it delivered her from a lot of pain.
Yeah.
So I'm aware that I haven't got that long to live. I mean,
you might. Look at you. You are Peter Pan. I've never seen
a
man look more sprightly.
But I mean, I could fall down the stairs any time, really, or go under a bus. I feel physically fine, and I feel quite able to deal with it. But that is just a fact of life. So you do, although you look back in the past, you also look forward and think, what will I do to keep going? I mean, touch wood, I will be physically okay to do another journey, but I might not be. And then if I can't do any more travelling, or things happen. Your body gets, things begin to wear out. And I have to be prepared for that.
You'll cross that bridge when you get to it, I suppose.
Yes, but you do think about the bridge.
Do you think about God?
Yes, I think about God. I have sort of rather ambivalent attitude to God. I have no faith in the sense that, the sort of belief in Christ saving the world and all that. But I believe in people's belief, and I'm rather reassured that some people do have a belief. And I have a feeling that, I say my prayers, and, I think that's a good thing. Just to sort of, remember there's something else there. I mean, it probably isn't, but it's a construct to make us deal with the feeling that we're just not going to drop off the end of the earth and that'll be it.
And I know we're running short of time, and I could talk to you for hours. But before we completely end this programme, what have you thought of an epitaph for your gravestone, as we're on this rather morbid wicket?
Yes, I have. It's gone to lunch.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming on to the third act.
Lovely.
It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. It's made me feel much younger. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed today's show, you can hear more episodes in the series by clicking follow wherever you're listening to this, or simply searching The Third Act on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. And if you think your friends would love to listen, please do tell them about us. This episode was produced by Pete Norton and made possible by Auriens, luxurious residences that are redefining later living in the heart of Chelsea. I'm Catherine Fairweather, and I can't wait to join you next week for the third act.